Maya Rodriguez walked out of the assessment facility for the last time, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder and her dreams crushed under the weight of a single word stamped across her evaluation file: unfit. The morning sun felt too bright as she made her way to the parking lot, squinting against the glare that seemed to mock her failure. Behind her, the sounds of other candidates continuing their training echoed across the compound. Shouts of instructors, the rhythmic pounding of boots on pavement, and the sharp crack of gunfire from the ranges created a symphony she would no longer be part of. "Rodriguez, wait up!" Maya turned to see Captain Sarah Chen jogging toward her, the woman's face etched with concern. Chen had been one of the few instructors who had shown Maya any real encouragement during the brutal 6-month selection process. "I wanted to talk to you before you left," Chen said, catching her breath. "What happened in there wasn't right." Maya shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite the burning disappointment in her chest. "The board made their decision. I'm not Special Forces material." "That's garbage, and you know it." Chen's voice carried an edge of anger that surprised Maya. "Your scores were off the charts. Physical fitness, marksmanship, tactical analysis, stress management, you outperformed 90% of the candidates." "But not in the areas that mattered," Maya replied bitterly. She had replayed the board review a dozen times in her head during the long walk from the conference room. Too small, too quiet. Lacks the aggressive leadership qualities necessary for special operations. Chen's jaw tightened. Colonel Harrison has some very old-fashioned ideas about what makes a good soldier. The man thinks special forces should look like action movie heroes. Maya had known from the beginning that her chances were slim. At 5 feet 4 inches and barely 130 pounds, she didn't fit the physical profile most people expected from elite military operators. Her quiet demeanor and methodical approach to problems were often mistaken for weakness or lack of confidence. She had hoped her performance would speak louder than appearances, but apparently she had been wrong. "Maybe he's right," Maya said, adjusting the strap of her bag. "Maybe I'm better suited for regular army." "Don't you dare think that way." Chen stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I've been in special operations for 12 years, and I've seen a lot of hotshots wash out when things got real. But you've got something different, something that can't be taught." Maya wanted to ask what Chen meant, but the sound of her phone buzzing interrupted the conversation. She glanced at the screen and saw her mother's contact photo smiling back at her. "I should take this," she said apologetically. "Of course. But Maya?" Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't give up on this path completely. Sometimes the military needs to catch up with what actually makes someone dangerous." As Chen walked away, Maya answered her phone. "Mija, how did it go?" Her mother's voice carried the hopeful tone that made Maya's chest tighten with guilt. "I didn't make it." "Mom." The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever. Maya could picture her mother in their small kitchen in San Antonio, probably sitting at the worn wooden table where Maya had done her homework throughout high school. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know how much this meant to you." "It's okay, really. I'll figure something else out." "You always do. You're the strongest person I know, Maya. Your father would be so proud of the woman you've become." Maya closed her eyes, thinking of the photograph on her mother's mantelpiece. Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez, killed in action in Afghanistan when Maya was 16. The man who had taught her to shoot, to fight, and to never back down from a challenge. "I love you, Mom. I'll be home in a few days. Drive safe, Mija." Maya ended the call and stood in the parking lot for several minutes, watching other soldiers go about their training. Part of her wanted to march back into the facility and demand another chance, but she knew it would be pointless. The decision was final. She was halfway to her car when the emergency sirens began. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard before. A deep, warbling tone that seemed to vibrate in her bones. Around the compound, soldiers stopped what they were doing and looked toward the sky. Maya followed their gaze and felt her breath catch in her throat. High above the base, 3 massive objects hung motionless in the clear blue sky. They were nothing like any aircraft Maya had ever seen. Each was roughly triangular, but with curves and angles that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The surfaces appeared to be made of some kind of dark metal that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. "What the hell?" someone shouted nearby. More sirens joined the first, and Maya could hear the sound of boots running on concrete as personnel rushed to emergency stations. The peaceful morning had transformed into controlled chaos in a matter of seconds. Maya's training kicked in automatically. She dropped her duffel bag and pulled out her phone, opening the camera app to record the objects. Whatever was happening, she wanted to document it. As she held up the device, she noticed that the screen was filled with static. She tried switching to airplane mode and back, but the interference continued. "All personnel, report to designated emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill." The announcement echoed across the base through speakers mounted on light poles and buildings. Maya looked around, realizing that she was no longer officially part of the base personnel. Her clearance had been revoked when she failed selection, but her feet carried her toward the nearest building anyway. Inside, she found organized chaos. Soldiers were running between stations, officers were barking orders into radios, and multiple screens displayed feeds from around the world. Every screen showed the same thing: unidentified flying objects hovering over major military installations across the globe. "Rodriguez!" Captain Chen appeared at her elbow, looking harried. "What are you still doing here?" "I was leaving when this started," Maya replied, gesturing toward the screens. "Are we under attack?" "We don't know what this is yet." Chen paused, studying Maya's face. "Your clearance hasn't been officially revoked until tomorrow. Technically, you're still part of this unit for another 18 hours. Maya understood the hint. Chen was giving her a chance to be part of whatever was about to happen. "What do you need me to do?" Chen led her to a communications station where a young sergeant was frantically trying to reach other bases. "Martinez here is our best radio operator, but whatever these things are, they're jamming most of our communications. We're getting scattered reports, but nothing coherent." Maya slipped into the chair next to Martinez and put on a spare headset. Her electronics training from her early Army days came flooding back as she studied the equipment. "What frequencies have you tried?" she asked. "Everything in our normal range," Martinez replied without looking away from his controls. "Whatever this interference is, it's adapting to our signals." Maya thought for a moment, then began adjusting the settings on a secondary radio. "My father used to tell me stories about Vietnam. When the enemy jammed their radios, they sometimes fell back to older frequencies that nobody expected them to use." She tuned to a band that was normally reserved for amateur radio operators and began broadcasting a simple message. Any station, this is Bravo 77 requesting status report." For several minutes, there was nothing but static. Then, crackling through the interference, came a response. "Bravo 77, this is Echo 23. We're tracking approximately 40 objects worldwide. No response to any communication attempts. No hostile action yet, but everyone's on high alert." Maya looked up to find Chen and several other officers gathered around her station. "Keep working on that," Chen said. "We need to know what's happening out there." Over the next hour, Maya managed to establish contact with bases across the country and even a few overseas. The picture that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. The objects had appeared simultaneously at 800 Eastern Time over every major military installation in the world. They showed no signs of movement or aggression, but their presence was clearly deliberate. "Sir, we're getting reports from civilians too," Martinez said, looking up from his station. "These things are showing up on social media everywhere. People are calling them everything from angels to invaders." Colonel Harrison strode into the communications center, his face grim. "What's our status?" Chen stepped forward. "No communication from the objects. No hostile action. But they're clearly watching us. Satellite imagery shows their position to observe all our major assets." Harrison's gaze fell on Maya, and his expression darkened. "What is she doing here? I thought I made it clear that Rodriguez was not suitable for this unit." "Her clearance doesn't expire until tomorrow, sir," Chen replied calmly. "And she's been instrumental in establishing communication with other bases." Harrison looked like he wanted to argue, but another voice cut through the tension. "Sir, we've got movement." Everyone turned toward the main display screen. The feed showed one of the objects above their base beginning to descend. It moved slowly, deliberately, until it was hovering perhaps 200 feet above the parade ground. "All stations, prepare for possible contact," Harrison ordered. "Get our best people out there." Maya watched as teams of soldiers rushed to surround the landing area. They moved with precision and professionalism, but she could see the tension in their postures. Everyone understood that they were potentially witnessing the most significant moment in human history. "Sir," Martinez called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's not on any of our frequencies, but somehow it's coming through our speakers." The voice that emerged from the communication system was unlike anything Maya had ever heard. It was clearly artificial, with a quality that suggested advanced technology, but there were undertones that seemed almost musical. "Military installation designation Bravo 77. We require communication with your most capable combat personnel. We will select individuals for assessment. Compliance is necessary for continued peaceful interaction." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could feel the weight of the moment settling over everyone in the room. Harrison was the first to speak. "Transmit our response. Tell them we're willing to communicate, but that any assessment must be voluntary." Martinez worked frantically at his controls, then shook his head. "Sir, I can't establish two-way communication. Whatever they're using, it's completely beyond our technology." On the main screen, the object began to emit a soft blue light. The light spread outward in a dome shape, encompassing the entire parade ground and the surrounding buildings. "Sir, we've lost all contact with the teams outside," Martinez reported. "Everything inside that light field is completely cut off." Maya stared at the screen, watching soldiers moving around inside the blue dome like figures in a snow globe. They appeared to be trying to communicate with the base, but no signals were getting through. "What are they doing to our people?" Harrison demanded. The artificial voice spoke again. "Assessment beginning. Combat personnel will be evaluated for capability and threat level. Results will determine the nature of future interaction between our species." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever these beings were, they had come to test humanity's military capabilities. And somehow, she suspected that the results of these tests would determine the fate of everyone on Earth. As she watched the blue light continue to cover the parade ground, she couldn't shake the feeling that her own journey was far from over. The Special Forces Board had dismissed her as unfit, but something told her that these aliens might have a very different definition of what made someone dangerous. "Sir," Chen said quietly, "what if they're not just testing our soldiers? What if they're testing us as a species?" Harrison's jaw tightened as he stared at the screen. "Then God help us all." Outside, the blue light pulsed once and then began to intensify. Maya realized that whatever was about to happen, it would change everything for humanity. The question was whether they would be judged worthy of survival or marked for elimination. She touched the small cross pendant her father had given her, the one she always wore during difficult times. For the first time in her life, Maya Rodriguez found herself hoping that being dismissed from Special Forces might turn out to be the least important thing that happened to her today. The blue light held for exactly 17 minutes. Maya had been timing it, partly out of nervous habit and partly because some instinct told her that every detail might matter. When the light finally faded, the soldiers on the parade ground stood motionless for several seconds before rushing back toward the communications center. "Martinez, get me contact with Team Leader Davidson," Colonel Harrison ordered. "Sir, I'm trying, but there's still interference around the landing zone." Maya watched the main screen as the soldiers made their way across the parade ground. Their movements seemed different somehow, more cautious, more deliberate. When the first team finally reached the building, Maya could see Lieutenant Davidson's face through the security camera feed. The man looked shaken. "Sir," Davidson's voice came through, crackling with static. "We need to debrief immediately. What we just experienced, it's not like anything in our training manuals." Harrison gestured toward the briefing room. "Get in here, bring your entire team." As the soldiers filed into the briefing room, Maya started to follow, but Harrison held up a hand. "Not you, Rodriguez. This is classified above your level." "Sir," Chen interrupted, "Rodriguez has been integral to our communications effort. Her insights might be valuable." Harrison's expression suggested he disagreed, but before he could respond, Martinez called out from his station. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the object." The artificial voice filled the room again. "Assessment of primary combat personnel complete. Results indicate moderate capability but insufficient adaptation to non-standard threats. Secondary assessment required with different personnel selection criteria." Maya felt a strange chill run through her. Secondary assessment meant the aliens weren't satisfied with what they had seen from the Special Forces teams. "What do they mean by different selection criteria?" Chen asked. The voice responded as if it had heard her, though Maya was certain the communication system wasn't capable of two-way transmission. Previous assessment focused on individuals selected for physical dominance and conventional tactical training. Secondary assessment will evaluate subjects chosen for adaptability, unconventional problem-solving, and survival instinct rather than institutional ranking. Harrison's face had gone pale. "They want different soldiers." "No," Maya said quietly, the pieces clicking together in her mind. "They don't want soldiers at all. They want survivors." Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but continued her thought. "Think about it. They said the first group showed moderate capability but insufficient adaptation to non-standard threats. They're not looking for people who can follow military doctrine. They're looking for people who can think outside the box when everything goes wrong." The alien voice spoke again. "Correct assessment. Individual designated Maya Rodriguez will report to the assessment area for secondary evaluation." The silence that followed was absolute. Maya stared at the speakers, certain she had misheard. "How do they know her name?" Martinez whispered. Chen was the first to recover. "They've been monitoring our communications. They've heard us talking." "No way in hell," Harrison said firmly. "I'm not sending a failed candidate to represent this base." "Sir," Maya said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice, "I don't think they're asking." As if to confirm her words, the blue light began to descend again. But this time it was focused in a narrow beam that seemed to be pointing directly at the communications center. "Individual Maya Rodriguez, report for assessment. Delay will be interpreted as non-compliance." Maya looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. Some showed fear, others confusion. But in Chen's eyes, she saw something that looked almost like pride. "I'll go," Maya said. "Absolutely not," Harrison snapped. "We don't negotiate with unknowns. I'll send Davidson's team back out." The alien voice interrupted again. "Only the designated individual is acceptable for secondary assessment. Alternative subjects will be rejected." Maya stood up, her decision crystallizing. "Sir, with respect, I don't think we have a choice. They've made it clear what they want." "Rodriguez, you're not qualified for this kind of mission." "Maybe not according to the Special Forces Board," Maya replied, "but apparently I'm qualified according to them." She gestured toward the screen showing the alien craft. "And right now, their opinion seems to carry a bit more weight." Chen stepped forward. "Sir, if they've specifically requested her, there must be a reason. Maybe we should trust their judgment." Harrison looked like he wanted to argue further, but Davidson's voice crackled over the radio from the briefing room. "Sir, you need to hear what happened out there. These beings, they put us through scenarios we've never trained for. Nothing in our doctrine prepared us for what they can do." Maya felt her resolve strengthen. If the Special Forces teams had struggled with the assessment, maybe her unconventional background would actually be an advantage. "I'm going," she said firmly, "but I want to hear what Davidson's team experienced first." Harrison looked ready to refuse, but Chen intervened again. "Sir, tactical intelligence about the assessment could be crucial. 5 minutes could make the difference between success and failure." Reluctantly, Harrison nodded toward the briefing room. 5 minutes. Then you go." Inside the briefing room, Davidson's team looked like they had been through a combat zone, despite the fact that Maya could see no physical injuries. Their faces showed the kind of exhaustion that came from psychological stress rather than physical exertion. "They put us in a simulation," Davidson began without preamble. "But it wasn't like any VR we've used before. It felt completely real. We could smell gunpowder, feel the wind, taste dust in the air." Sergeant Martinez, a different Martinez from the radio operator, nodded grimly. "The scenario was a hostage rescue, but nothing made sense. The building kept changing layout. The hostiles were using weapons that didn't follow physics. Gravity would shift directions without warning." "How did you handle it?" Maya asked. "We tried to follow standard protocols," Davidson admitted. "But every time we thought we had the situation under control, the rules would change. The hostages would turn out to be holographic decoys. The exits would lead to different floors than they should. Our equipment would malfunction in impossible ways." "They weren't testing your combat skills," Maya realized. "They were testing how you adapt when everything you know stops working." "Exactly," Davidson said. "And we failed. We kept trying to force the situation to match our training instead of adapting to what was actually happening." Maya absorbed this information quickly. The aliens weren't interested in traditional military strength. They wanted to see how humans responded to complete uncertainty. "Did they give you any feedback?" she asked. "Just that we showed excessive reliance on predetermined responses and insufficient creative problem-solving under chaos conditions," Martinez replied. Whatever that means. Maya thought about her own background. She had always been the one other soldiers came to when equipment broke down in unexpected ways or when missions went sideways. Her small size and quiet nature had forced her to find creative solutions rather than relying on brute force. "Time's up," Harrison called from the doorway. "Rodriguez, are you sure about this?" Maya stood up, checking her gear out of habit. She still wore her standard combat uniform and carried her sidearm, though she suspected they would be of limited use in whatever test awaited her. "I'm sure," she said. As she walked toward the door, Chen caught her arm. "Remember, they chose you for a reason. Trust your instincts." Maya nodded and headed outside. The blue light was still focused on the area around the alien craft, creating a column of illumination that stretched from the object down to the parade ground. As she approached the edge of the light, Maya felt a strange tingling sensation, like mild static electricity. She stepped into the beam. The world immediately changed around her. Instead of the familiar parade ground, she found herself standing in what appeared to be a dense jungle. The air was thick with humidity and filled with the sounds of exotic birds and insects. Sunlight filtered through a canopy far overhead, casting shifting shadows on the forest floor. "Assessment beginning," the alien voice announced, though now it seemed to come from everywhere at once rather than from speakers. Scenario 1. Resource acquisition under hostile conditions. Maya looked around, trying to orient herself. The jungle seemed real in every detail. She could smell rotting vegetation and feel insects landing on her exposed skin. But she remembered Davidson's warning about the reality of the simulation. Objective: locate and secure 3 survival resources within time limit. Resources are hidden throughout the environment. Hostile entities will attempt to prevent acquisition. Maya checked her equipment and found that her sidearm was still in its holster, but when she drew it, the weapon felt wrong somehow. The weight was off, and when she checked the chamber, she discovered ammunition unlike anything she had ever seen. The bullets appeared to be made of some kind of crystalline material. Unconventional weapons for an unconventional test, she muttered to herself. She began moving through the jungle using skills her father had taught her during childhood camping trips combined with techniques learned in basic military training. But instead of following standard patrol patterns, she tried to think like the aliens who had designed this test. If they wanted to see adaptation and creative problem-solving, then following predictable human behavior would likely result in failure. Maya decided to think about what resources she would actually need for survival in this environment: water, shelter materials, and food. She found the first resource, a water purification device, hidden inside what appeared to be a fallen log. But as she reached for it, she heard movement in the underbrush around her. The hostile entities that emerged from the jungle were unlike anything from Earth. They moved on 6 legs like oversized insects, but their heads were distinctly reptilian. They carried weapons that fired some kind of energy projectile that left scorch marks on the trees. Maya's first instinct was to take cover and return fire, but she forced herself to think differently. The aliens had said they wanted to see adaptation to non-standard threats. What if the obvious response was exactly the wrong approach? Instead of engaging the creatures directly, Maya used her small size to her advantage, moving through spaces too narrow for the 6-legged entities to follow. She led them on a chase through dense undergrowth, using the terrain to slow them down while she maintained her speed. When she found the second resource, what appeared to be some kind of emergency shelter kit, she was ready. Instead of trying to fight her way to it, she used a fallen branch to trigger what looked like a trap mechanism, then grabbed the kit while the hostile entities were distracted by the noise. The third resource proved more challenging. It was located in a clearing where the entities had set up what appeared to be a patrol pattern. Maya spent several minutes observing their movement, looking for patterns and weaknesses. What she discovered surprised her. The creatures weren't actually patrolling randomly. They were moving in a mathematical sequence that repeated every 90 seconds. Once she recognized the pattern, she was able to time her approach to reach the resource, some kind of concentrated food supply, during the brief window when that area was unguarded. Scenario 1 complete, the alien voice announced. Performance evaluation, excellent adaptation to unknown hostile capabilities, creative use of environment and tactical analysis, minimal reliance on conventional combat responses. The jungle faded away, and Maya found herself standing in what appeared to be a damaged spacecraft. Emergency lights flashed red, and she could hear the sound of alarms and escaping atmosphere. Scenario 2. Technical problem-solving under extreme stress. Maya looked around the spacecraft interior, noting the alien design and unfamiliar technology. Nothing looked like any human-built equipment she had ever seen. Objective: restore life support systems before atmospheric failure results in termination. All standard repair procedures are non-functional due to system incompatibilities. Maya felt a familiar thrill run through her. This was exactly the kind of problem she had always excelled at: fixing broken equipment when the manual didn't apply and replacement parts weren't available. She began exploring the spacecraft, tracing what she assumed were power conduits and atmospheric processing units. The alien technology was far beyond human engineering, but the basic principles of life support were universal. Something had to be bringing in breathable atmosphere, something had to be removing waste gases, and something had to be regulating pressure and temperature. The damage appeared to be the result of some kind of energy weapon impact. Several key components were completely destroyed, but Maya could see that the aliens had built significant redundancy into their systems. The problem wasn't that life support was impossible to restore. It was that the obvious repair approaches required replacement parts that didn't exist. Maya began to think about alternative solutions. If she couldn't fix the damaged components, could she bypass them entirely? She studied the alien conduit system, looking for ways to reroute power and atmospheric flow around the damaged sections. The work required her to crawl through spaces barely wide enough for her small frame, splice together incompatible alien technologies and jury-rig connections that had never been designed to work together. But gradually she began to see results. When the life support system finally came online, filling the spacecraft with breathable atmosphere, Maya felt a surge of satisfaction that reminded her why she had always loved working with electronics and machinery. "Scenario 2 complete," the alien voice announced. "Performance evaluation, exceptional problem-solving capabilities under extreme conditions, superior ability to adapt human technical knowledge to unknown systems, innovative approach to resource limitations." The spacecraft faded, and Maya found herself standing on what appeared to be an empty parade ground. But something felt different about this space. The air had a strange quality to it, and the lighting seemed to come from no particular source. "Final scenario," the alien voice said. "Combat assessment against non-standard opponent." A figure materialized in front of Maya, and she gasped in surprise. The opponent looked human at first glance, but as Maya studied it more carefully, she realized it was something else entirely. The movements were too precise, too fluid. The eyes held an intelligence that seemed somehow artificial. "Opponent possesses superior physical capabilities, advanced weapons systems, and tactical knowledge of all human combat doctrines," the voice explained. "Victory through conventional combat approaches is impossible." Maya looked at her crystalline ammunition and considered her options. The opponent was armed with what appeared to be an energy weapon of some kind, and its stance suggested extensive combat training. She thought about Davidson's team and their failure to adapt when conventional approaches proved inadequate. The aliens had made it clear that trying to outfight this opponent using standard tactics would result in failure. So Maya decided not to fight at all. Instead, she began to move in patterns that seemed random, but were actually based on mathematical principles she had learned in college. She used terrain features that weren't quite what they appeared to be, taking advantage of the artificial nature of the environment to create opportunities that wouldn't exist in the real world. When the opponent attempted to engage her, Maya focused on evasion rather than confrontation. She used her small size and agility to stay out of the line of fire while studying her opponent's behavior patterns. What she discovered was that the artificial being was indeed superior in every conventional combat capability. But it was also predictable in ways that a living opponent might not be. It responded to threats according to optimal tactical algorithms, which meant Maya could anticipate its responses if she could understand the logic driving its decisions. Maya began to use the environment itself as a weapon. She led the opponent into areas where its superior reach and strength became disadvantages, where its advanced weapons couldn't be brought to bear effectively, and where its reliance on optimal tactics made it vulnerable to completely irrational approaches. The final moment came when Maya realized that the opponent was programmed to neutralize threats, but not necessarily to pursue opponents who posed no immediate danger. She dropped her weapon, sat down in the middle of the combat area, and began to disassemble a piece of electronic equipment she found on the ground. The opponent stood over her, weapon trained on her position, but unable to justify an attack against someone who was clearly not threatening it. After several minutes, it began to show signs of confusion as its programming struggled to categorize her behavior. Maya used that moment of hesitation to complete her electronic modification and activate a feedback loop in the opponent's weapon system that caused it to overload and shut down. "Final scenario complete," the alien voice announced. "Performance evaluation. Revolutionary approach to asymmetric combat. Complete adaptation to non-standard threat parameters. Superior creative thinking under extreme pressure." The parade ground faded away, and Maya found herself standing in a space that could only be described as pure white. There were no walls, no ceiling, no floor that she could see, yet she stood on solid ground. "Assessment complete," the alien voice said. "Results indicate that human species possesses individuals capable of exceptional adaptation and creative problem-solving. Subject Maya Rodriguez demonstrates capabilities that exceed standard parameters for military evaluation." A figure materialized in front of Maya, clearly alien, but somehow not threatening. It was tall and slender, with large eyes that held unmistakable intelligence. "Your species will be offered alliance rather than subjugation," the being said, its voice now directly transmitted into Maya's mind rather than through speakers. "But first, we have an offer for you personally." Maya felt her heart racing as she realized that her performance in the assessment had just changed the fate of humanity. But something told her that her own journey was just beginning. Maya stared at the alien being standing before her in the endless white space. Its large, dark eyes seemed to hold depths of knowledge that made her feel very small and very young. "An offer?" she managed to say. "Our species has encountered 17 civilizations in this galaxy," the being explained, its mental voice carrying undertones of something that might have been respect. 16 were eliminated as threats or dismissed as irrelevant. Your species is the first to demonstrate the adaptability necessary for inclusion in the greater alliance." Maya felt the weight of those words. Humanity had passed some kind of cosmic test, and somehow her performance had been the deciding factor. What happened to the others? The ones who were eliminated? They fell into predictable patterns. They relied on strength over intelligence, on tradition over adaptation. When faced with challenges that could not be solved through conventional means, they failed. The being paused, and Maya sensed something like sadness in its mental tone. "We do not enjoy the necessity of elimination, but the galaxy contains threats that require extraordinary measures to counter." "What kind of threats?" Instead of answering directly, the being gestured, and the white space around them transformed into what appeared to be a view of deep space. Maya gasped as she saw vast fleets of dark ships moving between stars, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself. "The Devourers," the being explained. "They consume entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind. They have been expanding across the galaxy for millennia, and standard military approaches prove useless against them. Only species capable of extreme adaptation and creative problem-solving can hope to contribute to the defense efforts." Maya watched the dark ships move across the star field, trying to comprehend the scale of what she was seeing. "And you think humans can help fight them? Your species shows promise but requires development. Most humans think in terms of traditional warfare, larger guns, better armor, faster ships. But the Devourers adapt to such approaches within hours of first contact. Victory requires thinking beyond conventional parameters." The space view faded, and they were back in the white realm. Maya felt her head spinning with the implications of what she was learning. "You mentioned an offer for me personally," she said. "Yes." The being stepped closer, and Maya felt a sense of scanning, as if it were examining her on a molecular level. "Our assessment indicates that you possess exceptional potential for the type of thinking required in our conflict. We offer you the opportunity to join our advanced tactical development program." "What would that involve?" training with technologies and concepts beyond current human understanding, development of your already considerable problem-solving abilities, integration with the Greater Alliance's defense network. The being paused. In time, you would return to your species as a bridge between human military thinking and Alliance tactical doctrine. Maya felt torn between excitement and loyalty. What about my people, my planet? They would benefit significantly from your service. The Alliance provides protection, technology sharing, and eventual full membership for species that prove themselves. Your success would accelerate humanity's integration by centuries. Before Maya could respond, the white space began to shimmer around them. However, the decision need not be made immediately. You should first complete your current mission. My current mission? Return to your base and explain what has occurred. Your military leadership requires proper understanding of the situation. The being began to fade, but its voice remained clear in Maya's mind. Consider our offer carefully, Maya Rodriguez. You have demonstrated that human potential exceeds what your own species recognizes. Do not let their limitations define your future. The white space dissolved around her, and Maya found herself standing on the parade ground once again. The alien craft was still hovering overhead, but the blue light was gone. Around her, soldiers were running toward her position from every direction. Captain Chen reached her first, her face showing a mixture of relief and amazement. Maya, are you all right? You've been gone for over 3 hours. 3 hours? Maya looked around in confusion. The assessment had felt like it lasted perhaps 40 minutes. The alien craft has been completely silent since you entered that light beam, Chen continued. We had no idea what was happening to you. Colonel Harrison approached with several other officers, his expression unreadable. Rodriguez, we need a full debrief immediately. Sir? Maya replied, then hesitated. How could she possibly explain what had just happened? As if sensing her uncertainty, the alien voice spoke once more, broadcasting from the craft above. Military personnel of installation Bravo 77, be advised that your species has been evaluated and found suitable for Alliance membership. Individual Maya Rodriguez has served as your representative in this assessment and has performed with exceptional capability. The voice paused, and Maya could feel the attention of everyone around her focusing intently. Standard diplomatic contact will be established within 7 solar cycles. Until that time, this installation will serve as the primary communication point between our species. Individual Rodriguez has been designated as preliminary liaison due to her superior performance in adaptive problem-solving scenarios. The silence that followed was broken by Harrison's voice, tight with controlled emotion. Rodriguez, what exactly happened in there? Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her. Soldiers and officers she had trained alongside for months, people who had witnessed her failure to qualify for special forces just hours earlier. Now they were all staring at her as if she had become something entirely different. Sir, I think we should discuss this in private, she said. The debriefing took place in the secure conference room with Harrison Chen and several other senior officers. Maya recounted her experience as accurately as possible, describing the 3 assessment scenarios and the alien being's explanation of the greater galactic situation. Let me understand this correctly, Harrison said when she finished. These aliens have been testing civilizations across the galaxy, and most have failed. They're offering us membership in some kind of alliance, and they want you personally to serve as a liaison. That's the basic outline, sir. The woman I deemed unfit for special forces is now supposedly our species' primary contact with an advanced alien civilization. Maya could hear the bitter irony in his voice. Sir, I know this is difficult to accept, but... Difficult? Harrison's voice rose slightly. Rodriguez, do you have any idea what this means? If what you're telling us is true, then every assumption we've made about military readiness and personnel selection has been completely wrong. Chen leaned forward. Sir, with respect, maybe that's exactly the point. These aliens didn't choose our best soldiers according to our standards. They chose someone according to their standards. And their standards apparently value the qualities that our evaluation process specifically rejected, Harrison replied grimly. Maya felt a strange calm settle over her as she realized something important. Sir, I don't think this is about right or wrong evaluation methods. I think it's about different kinds of threats requiring different kinds of responses. She stood up and moved to the window overlooking the parade ground, where the alien craft still hovered silently. For most of human history, our military challenges have been against other humans. We developed doctrine and training to fight enemies who think like us, who have similar technology and similar limitations. But these aliens are facing something completely different. She turned back to face the room. The devourers they describe don't follow human logic. Traditional military thinking fails against them because they adapt too quickly to conventional approaches. That's why the aliens need people who can think outside normal parameters. And you believe you're one of those people? Harrison asked. I think I proved it today, sir. Chen smiled slightly. You know, it's ironic. The board rejected you for being too small, too quiet, and lacking aggressive leadership qualities. But those are exactly the traits that made you successful in the assessment. Maya nodded. My size let me move through spaces the larger soldiers couldn't access. My quiet nature meant I observed and analyzed instead of charging in. And my lack of aggressive leadership meant I was willing to find solutions that didn't involve combat when combat wouldn't work. Harrison was quiet for several minutes, staring out at the alien craft. Finally, he spoke. What are your intentions regarding their offer? Maya had been thinking about that question since she returned. I'm not sure yet, sir, but I think I owe it to humanity to seriously consider it. If you accept, you'd be leaving Earth for an unknown period? Yes, sir, but I'd be learning how to help protect Earth from threats we can't even imagine yet. Harrison turned away from the window. Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. This morning I told you that you lacked the qualities necessary for special operations. It appears I was wrong. Sir, you evaluated me based on the missions you knew about. Neither of us could have predicted this. No, but I should have recognized that military excellence comes in many forms. Harrison paused, then continued. For what it's worth, if you decide to accept the alien offer, you'll go with my full support and recommendation. Over the following days, as the story of the alien contact spread through official channels and eventually to the public, Maya found herself thrust into a spotlight she had never sought. News crews wanted interviews, military analysts requested consultations, and government officials sought briefings. But the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. Maya? The voice on the phone was elderly but strong. This is General Patricia Walsh. I understand you've received quite an extraordinary offer. Maya recognized the name immediately. General Walsh was a legend in the military, one of the first women to command a special operations unit and the architect of several modern tactical doctrines. Yes, ma'am. I've been briefed on your assessment performance. Remarkable work. I wanted to speak with you before you make your decision about the alien training program. I'd appreciate any advice you can offer, ma'am. Maya, I've spent 40 years in special operations, and I've seen a lot of talented people come and go. The best operators I've known weren't always the strongest or the most aggressive. They were the ones who could see solutions that others missed. General Walsh paused, and Maya could hear her taking a breath. What you accomplished in that assessment wasn't just impressive tactical thinking. It was a completely new approach to what military excellence can look like. If you accept their offer, you won't just be learning from them. You'll be teaching them about human potential. Ma'am, I'm honored that you think so highly of what I did, but, Maya, let me tell you something that the promotion boards and selection committees often miss. The future of warfare isn't going to be won by people who can follow existing doctrine perfectly. It's going to be won by people who can write entirely new doctrine when the old rules stop working. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest as the general's words echoed what the alien being had told her. What you showed those aliens is that humans can adapt beyond their own limitations. That's not just militarily significant, it's evolutionarily significant. A week later, Maya stood once again on the parade ground, looking up at the alien craft. Her decision had been made after several sleepless nights of consideration, conversations with family, and deep reflection on what she wanted her life to mean. The alien being materialized beside her in the same way it had during the assessment, though this time it appeared in normal Earth environment rather than the white space. "You have decided," it said, the mental voice carrying a note of certainty. "I have. I accept your offer. Excellent. You will find the training challenging but rewarding. However, before we depart, there is one final matter to address." Maya looked at it curiously. "What's that?" "Your military leadership wishes to formally recognize your service. It is apparently important to your species to acknowledge exceptional performance through ceremonial rituals." Maya turned to see Colonel Harrison approaching with several other officers, including Captain Chen. Harrison carried a small wooden box that Maya recognized as the type used for military decorations. "Rodriguez," Harrison said formally, "by order of the Department of Defense and with the approval of the President, you are hereby awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for extraordinary heroism in action against an enemy of the United States." Maya's eyes widened in shock. The Distinguished Service Cross was the second highest military decoration for valor. "Sir, I don't understand. I wasn't in combat against an enemy." "Weren't you?" Harrison replied. "You faced unknown hostile forces under extreme conditions and achieved objectives critical to national security. The fact that the battlefield was a simulation doesn't diminish the reality of what you accomplished." He opened the box, revealing the distinctive cross-shaped medal with its blue and white ribbon. "Furthermore, you are hereby granted the rank of Major and assigned to the newly created Alien Liaison Division, where you will serve as humanity's first interspecies military advisor." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes as Harrison pinned the medal to her uniform, the same uniform she had worn when she was dismissed from Special Forces selection just a week earlier. "There's more," Chen added, stepping forward with her own announcement. "The Special Forces Board has reviewed your original assessment in light of recent events. Your status has been changed from rejected to assigned to classified special assignment. Congratulations, Major Rodriguez. You made Special Forces after all." Maya laughed, a sound that contained equal parts joy and amazement. "I guess I did, didn't I?" As the ceremony concluded and she prepared to board the alien craft for the journey that would reshape her life, Maya reflected on how dramatically things had changed. A week ago, she had been driving away from the base as a failure. Now she was leaving as humanity's first interstellar soldier. But more importantly, she was leaving with the knowledge that being dismissed by one set of standards had led to her being chosen by an entirely different and more demanding set of standards, the alien being waited patiently as she said her goodbyes to Chen and the others. Finally, she turned to face the future that awaited her among the stars. "I'm ready," she said. As they began to ascend toward the alien craft, Maya looked down at the base where her military career had seemingly ended and actually begun. She touched the Distinguished Service Cross on her chest and smiled. Sometimes the greatest victories come from being underestimated, and sometimes being dismissed as unfit for one mission is exactly what qualifies you for the mission that really matters. Maya Rodriguez had learned that lesson the hard way. Now she was going to teach it to the rest of the galaxy.